Emma stood in front of the bedroom mirror, carefully adjusting the hem of her black dress. It wasn't flashy or extravagant, just a simple, well-tailored piece that hugged her figure in just the right way. She turned slightly, watching how the fabric draped over her frame, smoothing it out with practiced fingers. Her hair, styled in loose, effortless waves, framed her face with an elegance that looked almost unintentional. She had put a little extra effort into her makeup tonight, nothing too dramatic, just enough to enhance her features. A light coat of mascara, a soft sweep of blush, and a nude lipstick that gave her just the right amount of polish. It was understated, subtle. Just enough to feel put together. From the bed, Ryan watched her, his dark eyes trailing her movements with quiet appreciation. He was leaning back, phone in hand, scrolling absent-mindedly, but his attention kept flickering toward her more often than not. "Really going all out tonight, huh?" His voice was easy, teasing, but there was no edge to it. Emma caught his gaze through the mirror, her expression unreadable for just a moment before she let a small smile curve her lips. "It's been a while since I've had a night out with the girls," she said lightly. "I just want to feel good." Ryan nodded. "You always look good." His words were simple, sincere. But even as he said them, Emma's fingers fidgeted with the bracelet on her wrist, adjusting it though it didn't need it. There was a slight pause, a barely noticeable hesitation, before she spoke again. "Nicole and the girls planned a little night out," she said casually, glancing at him briefly before continuing. "Nothing crazy. Just dinner and a couple of drinks." Ryan set his phone down and leaned forward slightly, his interest piqued. "Sounds nice." She nodded before turning fully to face him. "Would you be okay with that?" His brows pulled together slightly, not in suspicion, just mild surprise. Emma had never been the type to ask for permission. Their relationship had always been built on trust and mutual respect, and she had never felt the need to check in like this before. "You don't need my permission, Emma," he said with a soft chuckle. "You know that." "I know," she replied quickly, running a hand through her hair. "I just figured I'd check, in case we had plans or something." Ryan studied her for a moment, something about the way she said it catching his attention. It wasn't anything obvious, just a slight shift in her tone, a carefulness in her wording that made the smallest part of his mind take notice. But just as quickly, he let the thought drift away. "No plans here," he said easily. "Go enjoy yourself." Emma let out a quiet breath, her lips curving into a grateful smile. "Thanks." Turning back toward the mirror, she fastened her earrings and gave herself one final glance. "Nicole's picking me up at 7. I'll probably be back around midnight." Ryan nodded. "Sounds good. Just shoot me a text if you need a ride." Their eyes met in the reflection, and Emma's smile warmed. "I will." The room settled into a comfortable silence, broken only by the faint tapping of Ryan's fingers against his phone screen. Emma reached for her perfume, a familiar scent of vanilla and jasmine filling the air as she spritzed it onto her wrists. Ryan watched her for a moment. This was Emma, the woman he had married 3 years ago. He had never been the jealous type, never needed to be. Their relationship had always been steady, built on a foundation of trust that had never once wavered. And yet, something about the way she had asked him earlier, the barely there hesitation, the slight change in her tone, stuck with him. It wasn't suspicion exactly, more like a whisper of something left unspoken. He shook the thought from his head. Emma was just about to leave the room when she suddenly stopped and turned back. "Oh, almost forgot." She walked over to the nightstand, grabbed her phone, and started typing something quickly. Ryan glanced up. "What's up?" "Just letting Nicole know I'm ready," she said, her eyes flicking over the screen. He nodded, but in that moment, something caught his attention. Emma had tilted her phone ever so slightly, just enough to keep the screen out of his direct view. It was such a small, subtle thing, barely noticeable. And yet, Sometimes, it was the smallest things that planted the deepest seeds of doubt. Still, Ryan didn't say a word. Emma placed her phone down on the nightstand, slung her purse over her shoulder, and walked over to him. "I'll see you later, okay?" Ryan smiled, though there was something distant in his expression. "Yeah, have fun." He listened as the sound of her heels echoed down the hallway, each step fading into the distance. Then came the soft click of the front door shutting behind her. And then, silence. For a moment, Ryan just sat there, staring at the empty doorway. A feeling stirred in the back of his mind, something small but persistent. He didn't want to acknowledge it, didn't even want to entertain it, but it was there. A quiet, nagging unease. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head as if to physically dismiss the thought. Emma had never given him a reason to doubt her. And yet, trust isn't always tested by grand betrayals or dramatic revelations. Sometimes, it wavers in the tiniest of moments, in the subtle shifts too faint to put into words. And Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something had just changed, something barely perceptible but real all the same. Because unseen didn't mean unreal. Emma came home later than expected. The front door creaked softly as it swung open, a noise that seemed louder than usual in the stillness of the house. The dim glow from the hallway light stretched long shadows across the hardwood floor as she stepped inside, moving with slow, measured steps. The air felt heavy, thick with a kind of quiet that made even the smallest sound stand out. She hesitated in the entryway, fingers tightening briefly around the strap of her purse before slipping off her shoes, her movements controlled, almost too careful. Ryan had been lying in bed, drifting in and out of a restless half-sleep, when the soft rustling of the door opening pulled him fully awake. His eyes flickered toward the digital clock on the nightstand. 1:37 a.m. She had said she'd be back around midnight. A late return wasn't unusual. Plans ran over, conversation stretched longer than expected. But there was something about the way she stepped into the house, the deliberate quiet, the slight hesitation in her movements, that sent a ripple of unease through him. He shifted, pushing himself up against the headboard just as Emma stepped into the dim light of the bedroom. And that's when he saw it. She wasn't wearing the black dress she had left in. Instead, she stood there now in an oversized t-shirt. One that clearly wasn't hers. Time stretched in the charged silence between them. Ryan's mind took a second longer than his eyes to catch up, to piece together the obvious. A slow, cold sensation curled in his chest, sinking deeper with each passing second. His heart didn't race, it stalled. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than he expected, but there was a weight behind it that made it impossible to ignore. "Emma, what are you wearing?" She stiffened. It was barely noticeable, just a split second, but Ryan caught it. A flicker of something across her face. A hesitation too fleeting to be meaningless. It was the kind of pause that happened when the brain scrambled to adjust, to recalibrate, to come up with a way out. Her fingers twitched, gripping the hem of the t-shirt as if only now realizing she was still wearing it. And then, like an instinctive reflex, she moved, too fast. "I need to shower." The words spilled out, rushed, almost clumsy, so quick they barely had time to register. And before Ryan could get another word in, she was already heading for the bathroom. The door shut. A little too hard. The lock clicked. Ryan remained where he was, unmoving. He wasn't confused, confusion would have meant there was still a logical explanation to grasp at. But there wasn't. Emma had left the house in a dress. Emma had come home wearing something else. And the moment she realized he had noticed, she ran. A heavy weight settled in his chest. Cold. Unshakable. He had never felt this before. Not about her. Not about Emma. The steady rush of water from the shower filled the silence, drowning out everything else. She was stalling. Ryan pushed himself up from the bed, his body suddenly feeling heavier than it had just minutes ago. The rhythmic sound of water striking tile filled his ears. Then, faint but unmistakable, the soft click of the lock turning. The door cracked open, and Emma peeked out. Her damp hair clung to the sides of her face, framing an expression that was carefully composed, but her eyes betrayed her. There was something there. Not guilt. Not anger. Something quieter. Unease, edged with fear. She had changed again, now dressed in one of her usual sleep shirts. But it didn't matter. Ryan had already seen what she didn't want him to. For a moment, he didn't say anything. He just watched her, letting his mind sift through every detail, every subtle shift in her face. Then, at last, he spoke. "Where's your dress?" Emma blinked. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came right away. Instead, there was a fraction of silence, a split second where he could see the gears turning, the scramble for an answer. Then, too casually, she shrugged. "I spilled something on it." Ryan's stomach tightened. "What?" She let out a small laugh, too light, too forced. It didn't touch her eyes. "I don't know, something sticky." It was gross. "Nicole let me borrow this so I wouldn't have to go home in it." Ryan didn't react right away. He just let her words hang in the air, weighing them. Emma had never been good at lying. Not because she wasn't smart, she was. But because she had never been the type to convincingly mask her emotions. And right now, everything about her posture, her expression, the way she carefully avoided his gaze, was wrong. "Nicole let you borrow that?" he repeated slowly. She nodded. Too fast. Ryan let the silence stretch. Emma shifted slightly, the oversized shirt moving against her frame. It wasn't hers. And it didn't smell like her either. Not her usual perfume. Not the faint trace of alcohol or lingering restaurant scents he might have expected. It smelled like something else. Something undeniably male. Ryan's fingers curled slightly at his sides, his expression unreadable. She had no idea what he had just realized. "I can text her if you want," Emma blurted suddenly, her voice too eager, too rehearsed. "I'll ask her to confirm." "Don't." The sharpness in his voice cut through the room. Her lips pressed shut. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ryan exhaled, turning away without another word. He walked back to the bed, sliding under the covers. Emma hesitated, the tension in the air shifting. Then, without a word, she followed, reaching over to switch off the bedside lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. But there was no peace. Ryan lay still, staring at the ceiling, his mind looping back over every tiny moment from the night. The hesitation before she left. The way she had checked her phone with the screen angled away. The way she hadn't met his eyes when she answered his questions. And now this. For the first time since they had been together, Ryan felt like there was a stranger lying next to him. Something had changed. Ryan had never been the kind of man to snoop, to second-guess, to let paranoia get the better of him. He had always prided himself on being rational. On believing in Emma. The way she had always claimed to believe in him. But last night had unraveled something deep inside him, something he couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the man's t-shirt she had come home in. It wasn't just the way she had frozen when he noticed. Or the way she had bolted to the bathroom as if she was running from a crime scene. Or how she had stumbled through a flimsy, half-baked lie about Nicole lending her clothes. Lying in bed beside her that night, Ryan had felt something crack beneath the weight of it all. And now, as the morning sun filtered through the curtains, painting soft golden lines across the room, he knew he couldn't let it go. Emma was still asleep, her breathing slow and steady, as if nothing had happened. As if last night had been perfectly normal. As if she hadn't walked into their home wearing another man's shirt and panicked the moment he asked about it. Ryan sat up slowly, moving with deliberate care. He didn't want to wake her. He didn't want to hear another excuse, another nervous attempt at smoothing things over. He just wanted the truth. And he was going to find it. He needed answers. Real ones. Sliding out of bed with careful precision, Ryan grabbed his phone and slipped out of the room, his footsteps silent as he moved through the dimly lit hallway. The house was still. Too still. The kind of silence that didn't feel natural. It felt forced. Ryan scrolled through his contacts, his thumb hesitating over a familiar name. Emily. Emily wasn't just one of Emma's closest friends, she was the one Emma confided in the most. Unlike Nicole, whose name had conveniently been thrown into Emma's excuse, Emily was different. She would know the truth. If there had really been a girls' night, Emily would confirm it. And if there hadn't been. Ryan took a steady breath and tapped the call button. The line rang twice before she answered. "Hey, Ryan." Emily's voice was bright, cheerful, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath his skin. "What's up?" For half a second, Ryan hesitated. Then, forcing a casual tone, he spoke. "Hey, Emily. Sorry for calling so early. Emma got home late last night, and I didn't want to wake her, but I was just wondering, how was the party?" A pause. Too long. Then, confusion. "What party?" Ryan's stomach twisted into a knot. He kept his voice steady. "Emma said she was out with you and the girls last night." "Girls' night." She mentioned Nicole was there too. Another pause. Then a small, uncertain laugh. "Ryan, I have no idea what you're talking about." The room suddenly felt smaller. Hotter. His jaw tightened. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Emily said slowly, as if carefully choosing her words, "we didn't go out last night. I haven't seen Emma in over a week." "And Nicole?" "She's on vacation with her boyfriend, so she definitely wasn't there either." Ryan's grip tightened around the phone. That cold, sinking feeling in his chest solidified into something sharp. Something unforgiving. Emily's voice softened, cautious now. "Ryan, is everything okay?" He swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. "Yeah," he said, though it barely sounded like his own voice. It was a lie. But now he knew. Emma had lied first. Ryan ended the call and stood there, unmoving, as the weight of realization settled deep into his bones. She hadn't been with her friends. There had been no girls' night. Which meant that every moment from last night. The hesitation before she left. The late return home. The man's t-shirt. The flimsy excuses. The way she had avoided his eyes. The way she had panicked the second he noticed. All of it had been an act. A poor one at that. Ryan had always believed that trust, once broken, was never quite the same again. And Emma had just shattered it. When he finally turned back toward the bedroom, something inside him felt different. His hands were steady. But his thoughts were razor-sharp, cutting through every moment of last night with brutal clarity. She had lied to his face. She had looked him in the eye and expected him to believe it. And he had given her chances. Multiple chances. To tell the truth. To ease the doubt clawing at his mind. But she had chosen to lie instead. When Ryan stepped back into the bedroom, Emma was still asleep, her body curled slightly under the blankets, her breathing slow and steady. She looked peaceful. Untouched by the storm she had created. He stood there, staring at her. His wife. The woman he had trusted more than anyone. And for the first time in all the years they had been together. He didn't recognize her. He had spent the entire night wondering if he had been wrong. Convincing himself that maybe, just maybe, he had overreacted. But now, with the harsh morning light cutting through the curtains, he had his answer. She had no idea that he knew. Moving slowly, deliberately, he sat down on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under his weight. But Emma didn't stir. Ryan exhaled, staring at the woman beside him. The lies between them no longer invisible. And this time, he wasn't going to ignore them. He wasn't going to wake her. Not yet. Let her sleep. Let her enjoy these last few moments of peace, before she had to face the wreckage she had created. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. The soft morning light filtered through the blinds, casting streaks of pale gold across the wooden floor. The house remained silent, except for the steady rhythm of Emma's breathing as she slept, curled beneath the same blankets that had once felt warm and familiar to Ryan. Now, as he stood at the foot of the bed, watching her peaceful, unsuspecting form, everything about her felt foreign. He had spent the entire night staring at the ceiling, his mind replaying every small but damning moment. Every hesitation. Every nervous slip. Every rushed answer that didn't quite add up. The way she had stepped through the door in a man's t-shirt. The way she had run to the bathroom, not walked. The clumsy excuses. The too quick explanations. The silence that had stretched just a little too long when he asked simple questions. And then, the final confirmation, Emily's confusion. There had been no girls' night. No gathering. No innocent excuse that could erase the cracks spreading through the foundation of their marriage. Emma had lied. But Ryan wasn't angry. Not yet. The rage hadn't reached him, hadn't set fire to his veins. What he felt was something colder. Deeper. A quiet, sinking realization that something between them had already been lost. His gaze shifted toward the desk near the window, where Emma's laptop sat untouched. She had never been secretive with it before. Had never felt the need to hide her screen. Had never locked her accounts. But then again. She had never come home in another man's clothes. She had never looked him in the eye and lied so easily. And if she had already shattered his trust? What was left to protect? Ryan moved toward the laptop, his steps slow, deliberate. His hands steady, despite the storm building inside him. The screen flickered to life. At first glance, everything appeared normal. A few open tabs. Work emails. An online shopping cart filled with things she had probably meant to buy but never did. Nothing alarming. Too clean. Too perfect. He clicked on the messaging app. His pulse remained even. Controlled. At first, everything seemed ordinary, casual conversations with friends, work colleagues, reminders about dinner plans and past weekend trips. And then, his eyes landed on a name he didn't recognize. It wasn't just the unfamiliar name that made his breath hitch. It was the frequency. The sheer number of messages. The way the conversation thread stretched back, years. Ryan clicked. And there it was. 2 years. Emma, can you believe it's been 2 years? Ryan's chest went tight. His vision blurred for a split second, his brain struggling to fully grasp the weight of those words. Not 2 months. Not even a handful of reckless nights. 2 years. 2 years of lying. 2 years of sneaking away in the moments between their life together. 2 years of pretending their marriage was whole, when it had been rotting from the inside. These weren't meaningless messages. They were full of memories he had no part in. Inside jokes he had never heard. Places she had gone while telling him she was somewhere else. His fingers scrolled further. He couldn't stop. Couldn't look away. Plans disguised as errands. Meetups passed off as work. Time spent with friends who had never actually been there. And then, as if to twist the knife even deeper, a message from last night. Ryan sat back, inhaling sharply through his nose. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't the product of an overactive mind grasping at shadows. This was real. It had been real for 2 years. Ryan exhaled slowly, his breath measured, even as his instincts screamed at him to act. To do something. To wake her up. To demand the truth straight from her lips. But what truth could there possibly be? What words could she say that would turn this into anything other than exactly what it was? She had chosen this. Over and over again. For 2 years. She had chosen deception. And now. He was the last to know. Ryan's gaze drifted back toward the bed, where Emma still slept, her breathing steady, her face serene. She looked at peace. Like someone who believed she had everything under control. Like someone who had carefully built a life where her secrets could stay hidden beneath the fragile illusion of normalcy. But she had no idea. She didn't know that the walls she had so carefully constructed had already crumbled. Ryan exhaled slowly, his movements precise as he closed the laptop. He wasn't going to wake her. Not yet. Because if he did, she'd have time. Time to lie. Time to weave a new story. Time to manipulate the situation before he had even decided how this was going to end. And he wasn't about to give her that. For 2 years, she had stolen time from him. Now, it was his turn. Ryan leaned back against the chair, letting the silence settle around him like a weighted blanket. Let her sleep. Let her have these last few moments of peace before she opened her eyes and faced the reality of what she had done. Because when she woke up, there would be nothing left to hide behind. By the time the sun set again, she would know. And there would be no escaping the truth. Ryan sat there in the dim morning light, his mind moving with slow, deliberate precision. The weight of his discovery pressed down on him, heavy and suffocating in its finality. There was no more doubt. No more searching for an explanation that didn't exist. No more wondering if maybe, just maybe, he had been wrong. The truth was undeniable. She had built their marriage on deception. She had looked him in the eye every single day and chosen a lie over honesty. And now. It was over. There was no fixing this. No conversation that could salvage what had been destroyed. No apology that could undo the past. No desperate plea that could turn back time. She had burned their marriage to the ground long before he ever realized he was standing in the ashes. He had been living in the wreckage. Blind to it. But now. He saw everything. His hands were steady as he reached for his phone. The screen glowed softly. 7:42 a.m. Emma was still asleep. Still wrapped in the illusion that she had everything under control. Still unaware that the life she had built was already crumbling beneath her. Ryan scrolled through his contacts, his thumb hovering for only a second before stopping on a name he never thought he would need. Brian Whitman, divorce attorney. He tapped the call button, lifting the phone to his ear as he stepped into the hallway, closing the bedroom door softly behind him. It rang twice before a groggy voice answered. This is Brian. Ryan exhaled, his voice even, detached. I need to start the process. A pause. Then, a shift in Brian's tone, more awake now, more alert. Ryan. His early morning grogginess disappeared instantly. What happened? Ryan clenched his jaw. She's been having an affair. His voice was calm. Too calm. For how long? Ryan swallowed. 2 years. Brian let out a slow breath. Are you sure? I have proof. That was all that needed to be said. All right, Brian replied, shifting into professional mode. We'll need to go over finances, assets, any potential disputes. Do you want to confront her first or start the legal side before she knows? Ryan's eyes flicked toward the closed bedroom door. The thought of listening to Emma stumble through one last lie, one last excuse, felt exhausting. No confrontation, he said flatly. Not yet. Brian was silent for a moment. You want out quietly. Ryan nodded, more to himself than to Brian. I want out on my terms. Understood. Can you come to my office today? I'll be there. They discussed the first steps, gathering financial records, securing assets, making sure Emma wouldn't have the chance to twist the situation in her favor. When the call ended, Ryan stood there for a long moment, the silence pressing in on him. This was real now. Not just a suspicion. Not just a possibility. It was happening. He was divorcing Emma. And she had no idea. She was still in their bed. Still sleeping peacefully. Still convinced she had everything under control. But by the time the day was over, that control would be gone. That wouldn't last much longer. Ryan moved through the house with quiet efficiency, his mind already sorting through the steps he needed to take. He wasn't interested in a drawn-out battle. He had no desire to hear Emma cry, to watch her scramble for excuses or beg for forgiveness. No. Emma had made her choice. Now, he was making his. He walked into his office, sat at his desk, and began pulling up bank statements. Investment accounts. Property deeds. Every document that would ensure he walked away from this with as little damage as possible. Emma had always been careless when it came to the details. She never paid attention to their finances. Never showed any real interest in managing money. Always trusted him to handle it. And now, that blind trust was going to work against her. As he methodically sorted through everything, his thoughts drifted to the last 3 years of their marriage. How he had trusted her completely, so deeply that it had never even crossed his mind to question. The late nights. The vague excuses. The sudden shift in how much time she spent away from home. He had been a fool. But not anymore. The hours slipped by in focused preparation. Ryan barely noticed the time passing until, around 10 a.m., he heard movement from the bedroom. Emma stirred, stretching as she stepped into the hallway, her hair tousled from sleep, her expression relaxed. Ryan felt nothing. She smiled at him drowsily. You're up early. Yeah, he said, taking a slow sip of coffee. Had things to take care of. She walked over, leaned down, and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. A meaningless gesture. Routine. Automatic. Hollow. If she noticed the way he didn't react, she didn't mention it. Want me to make breakfast? She asked, stifling a yawn. No, he said simply. I'm heading out soon. She nodded, completely unaware that he was walking away from her for good. The rest of the morning unfolded like any other. As if nothing was wrong. As if they were still the couple they had once pretended to be. Emma moved through the house in that effortless way she always did. Checking her phone. Sipping her coffee. Humming softly as she went about her usual routine. Ryan watched her. The way a man watches something in its final moments before it disappears forever. Because that's exactly what this was. The final moments. By the time the sun set, the papers would be in motion. By the end of the day, the life she thought she had under control would fall apart. And she had no idea. Ryan had no intention of warning her. Let her enjoy the illusion for just a little longer. Let her keep believing she had gotten away with it. Because when the truth finally crashed down around her, when she realized he had already left, that would be the only justice he needed.